on this channel. Let's now talk issues of the economy that are affecting you and I. Right now, we are joined by Dr. Alick Gumbo, who is an economist, and he will be unpacking the issue of the fact that the Bank of Zambia has maintained the monetary policy rate at 9%, and he'll be talking to Jason.
Thanks a lot, Mary. Good morning to you, and glad that you could find time to be with us on this edition of Morning Live.
It's always a pleasure, Jason, to be here again.
Let's first of all understand what this means.
The policy rate being at 9%. Okay, so firstly, I want to be as basic as possible that we do not put in any economic technical jargon for the general populace and our viewers there to understand exactly what it means to have a policy rate maintained at 9%. So what this, first of all, the policy rate itself, this is an instrument that Bank of Zambia uses to regulate, money supply in the economy. What I mean by money supply is how much money, because Bank of Zambia takes stock of how much money is supposed to be on the market or in the economy. So one of the instruments that the central bank will use is actually the policy rate. So what the policy rate will do is that it will regulate how much the central banks are able to borrow from the central the commercial banks rather are able to borrow from the central bank. Yes. So when you are maintaining a lower policy rate, it means that you want to encourage economic activity in the economy, because then you are giving leverage or enough space for the commercial banks to have more money in their custody. Okay, and then this money that is in the commercial banks is going to be loaned out to investors and you and me to encourage economic activity. So a lower policy rate by the central bank is more favorable in a growing economy, because then what you want to do is to encourage as much economic activity as possible. If central bank, for instance, observes that we have too much money in the economy, which can be a problem, especially with inflationary pressures, the central bank would want to reduce the money supply. So what could be the first measure is to withdraw part of the currency from the market. And the best way to do that is probably to raise the policy rate at a certain level, so that you have a restriction on how much commercial banks can be able to loan out in that particular period. So basically, if we have a policy rate maintained at a lower level, it is good for this economy. It only shows us that there's high, voracious appetite for investment. So now to be able to meet that, then we need more money to be floated on the market. So in a nutshell, we are appreciating the fact that the policy rate is being maintained at that level.
Does this increase liquidity on the market?
Of course, that is exactly what I'm trying to say. So liquidity on the market simply entails that an increase in liquidity on the market simply entails that you are floating more money on the market. You are allowing for more economic activity. You are allowing that Jason and myself should have more money to spend. Why does that happen? You want to grow the economy. You want people to have money to buy factor inputs. You want people to have money to buy agricultural inputs. So you are increasing liquidity on the money market to ensure that there's enough economic activity taking place for job creation, because we know that immediately we have economic activity, then we are also improving on our job creation.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're now talking about some of the the impact that this is likely to have in terms of just generally the economy. But to an ordinary citizen, they could be wondering, so all right, so yeah, okay, they've maintained, then what? All right.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you're unpacking it so that the person on the streets can then understand some of the effects that comes with this.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what after the monetary policy is maintained at that level, and then what when liquidity on the money market increases? So what will happen is, if I'm a marketeer at Soweto and I'm trading, maybe for argument's sake, in Salaula clothes, okay, and then we say that we have increased liquidity on the money market or in the economy. It means that the banks have more money, and when the banks have more money, these marketeers are able to borrow as much, okay? They are able to have money to borrow, and what will happen is that because of the increase in the money on the market, remember the issues of demand and supply, then the interest rates that the banks will begin to charge on their loans will go down. That is the outright effects that will come with an increase in money supply on the money market. Because what will happen is that banks will now have a lot of money. So to attract people to borrow that money, what do? You reduce the borrowing rate, okay? Mm-hmm. You reduce the borrowing rate so that people are able to borrow as much money as possible, okay? So you want to ensure that this level of liquidity that we have should go into the, because banks are only making profit and all of that through the loans. So now when you have so much money, what you want to do as a financial intermediary is that you want to reduce the interest rate on the borrowing side so that you and I can be able to borrow. So now with a reduced interest rate, these marketeers would be able to have access to finance. Okay, this can be through even the small lending institutions that we have around. They will be able to reduce their interest rates and give them more leverage.
Have banks really responded to this stability in the monetary policy rate?
To a greater extent, I would say not yet. I think it's a gradual process because for banks to make a decision and say, let us reduce the interest rates, there should be a prolonged stability in the policy rate. So the maintenance, for instance, if we had this downward trajectory going over time, and I'm very pretty sure that the financial intermediaries should be able to respond, but not as yet, because we know that the rates are still on the higher side, especially when you want to borrow from our commercial banks. We still have commercial banks that are pegging their borrowing rates even as much as 40%, 45%. So I think the response is not there yet, but this is a very good indication because we know that if there's this level of stability, then the commercial banks, those are businesses, they'll be able to respond over time because, in fact, they'll be forced to respond because there'll be so much money that they'll be holding.
What's your projection based on how on what has been coming from the Bank of Zambia regards the policy rate?
I think a lot of stability, Jason, and my projection is that there's either going to be a maintained rate that is going to prolong, and most probably even a further downward trend in the policy rate, looking at how the fundamentals are looking right now. We've seen stability in our inflation. Of course, we are still in a single digit bracket. Even up to now, we are at about 9.9%, which is very, very good for us. So if you're looking at those fundamentals, I think my projection could be that we may maintain the policy rate at 9% and probably even go down further, lower than 9.0%. So my projection would be that if we maintain the pricing mechanism that we have right now, if we can maintain a situation where there's a further downward trend in the price of fuel, for instance, we could be able to see the policy rate being maintained.
I was just about to ask whether what effects this policy rate has on price stability on the market.
Yes, a constant policy rate, a predictable policy rate is going to bring about a lot of price stability because then that when a policy rate is being maintained at that level, it means that the inflation rate is also, getting to a greater extent stable. So you want to see a situation where you have a stable pricing mechanism. So a stable policy rate is going to result into a much stable price mechanism. And I'm hoping that, holding all these other factors constant, we should be able to see a situation where we have a stable pricing mechanism in Zambia, which is to a greater extent affecting the businesses, because already you saw the push and pull that was coming out of the idea that we have reduced the price of fuel, and now the transporters must reduce the price of the bus fares. That is a problem, because we don't know what if at the end of the month the price of fuel goes up again, so we go back. So we need to see a much more stable pricing mechanism, and I think we are getting there with what government is doing.
Let's conclude really. How does this play, and how does this help? Is this helping in terms of what, for instance, the economic projections that were put across when, for instance, the budget was announced? How does this play along when it comes to GDP, GNP? How does this stable monetary policy rate play into some of these economic projections? Does it clearly show that we are on course?
I will tell you outrightly that yes, because first of all, to make a decision for the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank to make a decision that we should maintain the policy rate at 9.0%, already in the eyes of people that are players on the economic market, you are able to tell that there's a lot of stability, there's a lot of goodwill, there's a lot of expectation that we are going to take, you are going to make progress in as far as the economy is concerned. So the gross domestic product projections, we are sure that we will be getting there, because first of all, we know that there's stability, first of all, at central bank level, because this is where all the decisions with regards the supply of money, the monetary policy aspect of it. And remember, fiscal policy is governed, is to a greater extent influenced by what policies we are making at monetary level. So we know that for us to achieve this gross domestic product targets that we have, we should have a stable monetary policy in place, and stability in the monetary policy is seen by the stability in the policy rate itself, because that is the major instrument that central bank uses to control the supply of and demand of money on the money market.
And it helps with the stability of the kwacha against other currencies. Of
course, it helps on the stability of the kwacha against other convertibles, because with a reduced or maintained monetary policy, it entails that you are going to have people who have more confidence to float their dollars on the money market. So because you see, what has happened in the recent past is that because of the pronouncements, the pronouncements of the win-win pronouncements between the government of the Republic of Zambia and the IMF has, given confidence to the players on the market. And what are they doing? They are converting their dollars into kwacha, thereby giving strength to the kwacha. So that some of these pronouncements of maintenance in the rates and all of that gives much more confidence in the players on the market, and they're able now to feel very confident and say, let's offload. I'll tell you, Jason, a lot of business people had held on to their dollar, some of them in their houses. And now they've seen a lot of stability on the money market, central bank making efforts to try and maintain credible rates, maintain instruments that are going to help them understand that you are actually in a very safe hands. So they are now taking it back.
We have to go.
Great.
But thank you so much for your time, and just helping, obviously, us and the viewers just to understand what this means, obviously, to the day-to-day running, of our activities, Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, Jason.